When I realized that was the case, I was like, okay, so what I need to do then is really write these sort of critical evaluations. So I wrote a lot of critical evaluations using sort of my film theory side of myself, and people really liked those. I was so grateful for that. And then I was lucky. I sort of moved into this phase where it's like, oh, now people will talk to me, right? I did like the books of the films of Kevin Smith, Sam Raimi,
Yep.
Christopher Guest, and then more talents like would come in and allow me to interview them, and so then those books kind of became a mashup of critical evaluation and sort of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then my career kind of shifted again, where I was doing these big, like huge compendium books, like horror films of the 1970s, horror films of the 1980s, where I was just like watching hundreds of films and reviewing them and kind of putting them into little boxes. And then people really like that. So that's sort of where I've ended up staying. Like my new book, Horror Films 2000 to 2009, should be coming out in November.
Oh, nice.
And that covers 350 films from that era. I'm working on horror films of the 2010s now, and I really enjoy that but you do have to do a lot of research. I have to say, okay, like basically I need a year to watch movies and like a year to write. So there's like a long lead up time. And when I was doing horror films of the 70s or 80s, they were really fun because I love horror, but personally,
Yep.
To live on a steady diet of like the more gruesome stuff of recent years is really hard. You go back to the 80s and you get something like Fright Night or the funny Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and it's like, oh, okay, that's shoot. But sitting down and like telling my wife, hey, tonight we're watching all 3 Human Centipedes, it's like I don't think so, John. Let's not do that. I have found that whatever you want to say about quality or realism, the horror movies of late, they just miss a lot of humor. They're much more humorless by and large, and I do miss that. So it's like, phew. I told my wife, I think after horror films of the 2010s, that's probably a really good place for me to stop, and maybe I'll go back to horror films of the 60s or something like that. But I don't know that I can keep up with this diet of like really grim stuff. So
yeah, I mean the 70s and 80s, like Halloween and Friday the 13th were okay, but then like now it's like brutal. Like it's like you compare John Carpenter's Halloween to Rob Zombie's Halloween, and like,
right,
no offense to Rob Zombie, I just didn't care for that. It was just way too violent. Like
it was over the top brutality. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like the ones that make you think. Like you scare yourself thinking something's going to happen, as opposed to showing me that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I much prefer non-brutal, kind of stuff or whatever. And I've written a horror script, and I'm trying to figure out how to get it somewhere or whatever. But I don't even try to go brutal. I try to go more psycho, and I think psychological horror is actually scarier than like, oh, let's see what we can, bludgeon this guy or whatever. So, and then a lot of the ones like in the first Friday the 13th, they show like something coming down, and then you just see a blood spatter on the wall. That's all you need. You don't need to see the the whole gore or whatever. Sometimes,
right. So some of the the torture porn stuff is really hard. I mean, some of it's good. I always try to be like, I'm open to every film I watch. Show me what you're going to do. Tell me what you got. And I try to be open to it. Otherwise, I'm just, an old guy, right? Complaining about horror movies. And I don't want to be that guy. So it's like, I'll try to be open to everything. But it's like, if you live on a steady diet of some of the stuff now, it's like, wow, that is really grim. And then I kind of feel depressed, after I'm sad. I don't want to write about this, right? but some of it's fun. I've really liked the Jordan Peele stuff. So there's a humor in there. There's it's cerebral, also scary. So I hope maybe some more people will get into horror who have more of the that kind of ethos. I miss stuff like when Sam Raimi was always working in horror, and my son and I we I had to watch the remake of Evil Dead, which I like. I mean, I think the remake is good, but I mean, it's so gory. But if you go back to Sam Raimi's, it's gory but funny. You know what I mean? It's it's like blood. Somebody's like they shoot a hand and like blood like just fountains out like it's coming out of a garden hose. And stuff.
Oh yeah.
And my son just laughs at that. But then you watch the remake, it's like, oh wow, looks really real. And so I guess it's just a matter of what you're into horror for, I guess.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Human Centipede, and my wife and I watched that first one, and then we're like, yeah, let's check out the second one, which made the first one, in my opinion, look like a Disney film.
Oh gosh,
it was really twisted.
Those are some crazy movies.
Yeah.
Blumhouse
is putting out a lot of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have been a lot of good stuff on Hulu too. I've been watching.
Yeah.
I loved the new Predator movie, Prey. I thought it was
Prey was fantastic.
Yeah, I thought, wow, this is great. They've just like boiled out all of the non-essential stuff and brought it, this incredible story into this great natural background, and just having the two characters fight each other. I thought that's all you needed. And all over Facebook, people are like, now do one in samurai Japan. They should just move it all through history. Right?
They should, but they have all the weapons, right? In the earlier Predator movies, we saw all the weapons that they had collected, so you could do that. And this one was much better than the Predator that we got last time. I was not. I have to say, was not a fan, and I was like, Shane Black coming back, this will be great. And then I was like, what am I watching here?
Yeah, I agree with you. I was not a fan of that one, the Predator. And so, like, for this to come back and just be so lean and mean and beautifully filmed, and to really have, to just really focus on that combat between two warriors, I thought it was great.
It was a fun movie for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. My girlfriend's younger son watched it. He's actually watching all of them now. I think right now he's watching Predators, so he's like going through them all now or whatever. But
that's a good
that's a good one too.
Yeah. Growing up in the like I was born in '65, so growing up in the '70s and '80s, again, I think the '70s had the best of toys, comic books, trading cards, Mego action figures, blah 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 blah. But then the '80s gave us probably the best music and best movies. So like everybody's like, oh my god, my favorite movie is Back to the Future. That's the '80s, So like you got those two, the '70s with Planet of the Apes, '80s with Last Starfighter, Tron, so on and so forth. So there was that whole. John will say it's not you, John, my friend John would say it's like this 12-year, 14-year period of just like incredibleness. And then it was like it all tanked or whatever. But now with Stranger Things and them redoing the Halloween movies the correct way, Halloween and Halloween Kills and Ends or whatever. I mean, they're trying to bring us back to what was popular. And I mean, now it's like 40 years, we finally get a sequel to Top Gun or whatever.
Right.
Right. But yeah, there was so much in the 70s and 80s that like you can't compare with today, like I'm sitting here looking at, these guys, like who didn't want, one of these Galaxian? I have the Pac-Man.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So like, I mean, these were the thing, they're like $50 back then or whatever, but everybody wanted one so they wouldn't have to go to the arcade or whatever, but I just think we turned out some really good product in the 70s and 80s.
We had cool toys.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, just so much stuff. And if his room was just a little more that way, he would see, that started there. You would see, see that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
I could just bring toys over here.
Hold on a second. Films of John Carpenter.
Yes.
Did you get to talk to John Carpenter while doing that? No,
that was one of my early ones. It was a big success for me, but what I really did, and I felt really strongly about sort of this mission on these early books. So some of those, the phase sort of before I was able to have access to people and tell some of those behind the scenes stories, that's when I wrote the Wes Craven book, the John Carpenter book, and the Tobe Hooper book. And so like what I did, I was like, I am just focusing on these films, like looking at the films and focusing on them as sort of these like masterpieces and saying why. Because the thing was, you know, actually science fiction television and horror movies have something in common, which was, you know, before recently, people thought they were critics didn't take either seriously.
Yeah.
No one took TV seriously at all, any kind of TV. And people didn't take horror films seriously. In fact, quite the opposite in the 80s. If you go back to the heyday of, you know, Friday the 13th, you had people saying these films are antisocial, they make people mean, they're going to destroy society, they're anti-woman, they're anti-God. I mean, it was just like, it's like, and then you look at the Friday the 13th films today and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's more violence in an episode of Game of Thrones than there is in all the Friday.
Right.
That's true.
Like,
That's
really?
true.
You know, and anyone can watch those, right? You know, there's this charm and almost naivete to these Friday the 13th movies. But anyway, so I thought, well, my task here then is to write these books and explain, you know, what, because again, like The Thing for John Carpenter, why The Thing is actually a great movie and not what the critics said. You know, they called him a pornographer of violence for The Thing, which is ridiculous. And you know, at the time I wrote that, and I'm in no way taking credit for it, but at that time I was one of the few voices, because that book, you know, came out way back in 2000. I was one of the few voices that was championing, you know, the whole re-examination of The Thing, you know, had just kind of begun at that point. Now we all sort of accept The Thing was great and people missed the boat. Well, that wasn't the story back then. You can ask John Carpenter about how The Thing was originally received. So, you know, being able to talk about, you know, the Thing and why the critical reception was wrong, and to actually be able to point to concrete things in the movie and concrete shots, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that like became kind of my mission. I see myself as like the film theory guy. And I sort of rebelled because like most film theory guys are like, they love like foreign films. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I became the film theory guy who was a trader. I was like, no, horror movies, right? These horror movies are made brilliantly by incredible craftsmen and women. And let's see why. So let's take all those tools we use to say why, you know, this sedate black and white foreign film with just two people talking for 2 hours, all the tools we use there, let's apply that to horror movies. Let's apply that to science fiction television and use the tools that other people use to put those things down and talk about why we can use those tools to show how great they are. So that was the early part of my career. That was really the mission before I could, you know, talk to people like Willem Dafoe or Cliff Robertson or Gary Cole or whoever I talked to for the Raimi book, you know, and I could get their input then and say, did you know this was happening? Did you know this? What about this? What about that? So yeah. So early on, like with Carpenter, you know, I'm writing here in North Carolina. You know, I could write agents and say, will John Carpenter please talk to me, right? You know, but most of the time the answer was no.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend John is in Concord.
Oh, okay. So he's not far from me.
And then one of our other guest co-hosts, who was actually a child actor on Electric Company, Steve Gustafson, he's in Asheville. So you're right down there with both of them.
That's where my wife and I went on our honeymoon. We love Asheville. We'd love.
Oh.
It's super expensive, but we would love to retire. Yeah, we could ever afford it.
Now, out of all the John Carpenter movies, and I know it's a tough one because there's 4 that obviously come to mind right off that are like just, you know, classic or whatever. But you got Halloween, you got The Thing, you got Escape from New York, and you got Big Trouble in Little China, and you could throw They Live in there. But like, what would you pick for like your favorite John Carpenter movie?
Like, you're giving me like a Sophie's Choice. Like,
I mean, you don't have to pick those 5. You could pick any. Those are the ones that came to my mind because I know he's got.
I had the same question, RW. I was like, what is your favorite?
You ask it then.
What he said.
How do you pick your favorite child? I mean, I love them, but for different reasons. I love the simplicity of Halloween. That you know, somebody could have made a film about an escaped mental patient, and it would have been terrible. You know, going around killing babysitters. I mean, that could have just been horrendous. But the craftsmanship that Carpenter brought to it, you know, again, it's like everything was boiled out of the story, and it became this almost mythological story. And Michael Myers as the id and that blank white face, and you could project whatever your fears were onto that. And the way, he'd come out into the light or into the foreground. I mean, just amazing technically. So I loved the simplicity of that because, if you go back to Psycho, which I also love, obviously, I mean, it was a really like sophisticated game. It was trying to trick us all the way through, right? But Halloween was so simple. It didn't have to like resort to any tricks. It scared you just by telling its story. So I love the simplicity of Halloween. I love the social commentary of They Live. I mean, sort of, critiquing the Reagan 80s while we were still at the very end of Reagan 80s, the yuppieism, the consumptuous consumption,
consume, obey, consume.
Obey. They hand him a dollar bill, says, "This is your God" on the top. I mean, that's just like great stuff. I mean, to be able to comment about sort of what's going on in the world around you while it's happening. I mean, a lot of times people will comment later because they'll recognize what it was, but to be able to like see it in the moment and comment on it, that's pretty amazing. So I love that. And I love the paranoia of the Thing, the claustrophobia in that Arctic base, the Antarctic base, and of course the amazing practical special effects, but the whole idea of sort of alienation from your fellow man there, that you don't know who to trust. Fantastic. And on some days, so it's really hard to pick. I'll put on, just out of the blue, The Fog, and I'll be convinced that's an absolute underrated masterpiece. This incredible ghost story with the villain being a manifestation of fog, which is so beautiful in the film. It's done so beautifully. I don't know how he wrangled fog. But, I mean, fog is curling and chasing people down the streets, and it was before CGI. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what a nightmare this must have been. But it turned out great. And of course, I love his action films. Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China. In fact, I just rewatched Big Trouble in Little China with my son because I think I made him watch it when he was too little. He didn't remember it. So he's 15 now. So I don't remember it. So I said, all right, let's watch it again. And we loved that, the kind of manic, pulpy nature of that. So I don't know that I could pick. I mean, I think the only thing I would say is I wouldn't pick Memoirs of an Invisible Man. That's all I'll say.
All right.
I just watched it for the first time like a couple months ago. I was like, wait, Chevy Chase and John Carpenter? Okay.
I don't think it's as bad as most people say it is. I just don't think it's as good as most Carpenter stuff. Listen, I love John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. This whole show could be me making a case for why John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars is like a neoclassic. But again, I think I would be in the minority there, but I loved it.
I enjoyed Ghost of Mars as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great film. I think that he what I did at the time is, I compared it to sort of what was going on. Like, look at the action scenes in this, and you sort of know where everybody is and what's happening to them, and you can see how they build, and you understand the geography. Now compare that to something like Underworld or something where it's like a mincemeat of shots, and you can't tell where anybody is or how they're standing in relationship to each other. I said, like, Carpenter, he can shoot action like nobody else, so that it's comprehensible and suspenseful and everything else. So I think he does a lot of that in the film. I mean, for whatever the weaknesses of the film were, the action scenes were, fantastic, I thought.
Yeah, I can't hold this against him really, but I called John one time and he answered, and I'm like, is this John Carpenter? He goes, yeah, who is this? And I go, my name's R.W. Martin. I'm a writer and an actor from Vermont, and I'm a big fan. And he goes, oh, you're a fan? And I go, yeah. One of my favorite movies of all time is So yeah, that was fun. But yeah, I just, it's amazing that not only did he, write and direct the Halloween, but he did all the music, which is classic music. Like, you can't hear that opening Halloween theme and not know what movie it's from. Sort of like, John Williams's Jaws. It's just got that presence that you hear, you go Halloween, you hear it, oh, it's Jaws. So he not only is a good writer director, but he's a great composer as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would have a hard time picking as well. I mean, and Kurt Russell. I mean, Kurt Russell, Jeff Bridges are my two favorite actors. And it's hard to pick,
right.
Is Big Trouble in Little China or Escape from New York the better movie? It's really hard because they all have their moments that you go, oh, remember when he said that or when he did that or whatever. But yeah, it would be a hard one to pick what the best John Carpenter movie is. But like you explained, they all have their little things. But
absolutely, even something, some of the unsung ones like Prince of Darkness have great moments in them. In the Mouth of Madness, I love In the Mouth of Madness. That was one that didn't do well at the box office either, and that people have kind of re-examined and said, oh yeah, this was actually really good.
Body Bags.
Oh yeah! Oh my God!
Yeah! I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, this TV stuff is great. Like, someone is watching me. Is that what it was called? Adrian Barbeau, 1978. People forget he did an Elvis movie, which is kind of timely now because of the new.
Well, what's funny is nothing against the new one, but I don't know. I think I haven't seen it yet. I've seen previews and I've seen, enough to tell me that I like the Kurt Russell one better. But I just think Kurt did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Like, I just do. And what's funny is when you think of John Carpenter, you immediately think of Halloween, or you think of anything because it's always John Carpenter's the thing. Yep. John Carpenter's this, John Carpenter's that. So you always think of that. You never think of John Carpenter directing an Elvis movie.
Right.
Like, people forget that he did. And that, became that collaboration of him and Kurt doing a bunch of stuff together or whatever. But yeah, I thought that was a great movie as well.
Yeah, I loved it. Although I will say, I just watched the new Elvis movie and I really did like it too. I mean, I missed Kurt Russell, but I think his name's Austin Butler. He was great. I mean, I don't know if it was him or they somehow augmented his voice, but when he was speaking, he sounded exactly like Elvis. It was like
Kurt or the new guy.
The new guy. My cats are destroying my office. I didn't realize there was one in here.
If you need to take care of that, you can.
Valuable stuff over there. Kitties, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, I had to kick my cat out before it started because I was like, no. Because if the door's shut and the cat's in, they got to go out.
That's right.
If the door's shut and they're out, they got to come in. And I'm like, no, we're not playing this game. Cats are funny.
I got them out. So they outsmarted me. There you go. It isn't too hard to do, I guess.
So yeah, I mean, we touched on, you had said you collaborated with Rich Hanley a couple times, and like I said, we had him on last week or whatever. A lot of fun with Rich or whatever. But what did you collaborate on him with?
So he wrote a really brilliant book some years back, which was the Planet of the Apes chronology. And I'll tell you, as a kid, it was the book I always wanted because the Planet of the Apes saga is like a circle, right? It's that Taylor goes into the future. The spaceship comes back to the past, and then the apes rise. So it's like this big time circle, right? And he just fit everything in. Even the TV series, which I guess was 1,000 years before the first movie, but after Taylor, like he figured out how to fit everything in by dates, by going in and watching everything and taking notes. And so I got to write the foreword for his chronology and just sort of talk about how a book like that was so meaningful to me. I always wanted to know how all the pieces fit together. I think the only part of it that didn't work for me was the Tim Burton one was in there. I'm not a huge fan of the Tim Burton.
We actually talked about that, and we had determined that the ending was very close to what the original ending in the book was.
Right.
But then everything else wasn't quite right or whatever.
Right.
But
I still go back and I think it's going to make sense to me this time. I'm going to really understand it, and it never does.
Yeah, I mean, but if anything, it brought apes back into our future or into our present then again, because they, like I say, Fox had just kind of said, oh, we got Star Wars, we don't need apes. And it's sort of like Disney did Tron and then kind of forgot about it until they did that legacy thing.
Right.
And I mean, I thought it was an okay movie. It wasn't quite where I think they should have gone with it, but whatever. And then they're like, oh, we're going to do Tron 3. And then they're like, we're still doing Tron 3. We're going to be doing Tron 3. Tron 3's in the works. And it's like, come on, Disney. Like, you have, there's a bunch of Tron fans out there. I went to the 30th in California when they had the 30th anniversary out there. And it was just amazing how many people were there. And they just had the 40th. Unfortunately, I wasn't at that one. But there's so many Tron fans out there. You know, and then the Tron Uprising cartoon or animated, right. Some people say cartoon, some people say animated, was really good. And Disney's like, it's doing great. Let's pull the plug on it. Like, I don't understand.
You stop there. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I don't know if it was the Tim Burton movie or it was just time again, but I'll give the Tim Burton quality movie I'll say this: it maybe did raise the interest in apes because then we got this recent trilogy, which being not at all like the original, but which I really liked.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. It was really good.
It was really good. That was like a perfect trilogy of apes movies. I thought I never thought I would enjoy Planet of the Apes movies as much as I did from those first 5, but in a different way. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
You know, if you tell me they're all going to be, CGI, and I would be like, that's going to stink. It was great. Right?
It was really well done.
They were. I cannot complain. They found a way to do it and to really honor, I feel like, what the Apes movies were about, and the whole saga, and that who knows, maybe they'll even fit into that saga as we know it. Further they go into it. So I love those movies. The Tim Burton one just feels it feels more like a Tim Burton movie, which it was, than it does. Than a Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think at that time I wanted a Planet of the Apes movie that felt like Planet of the Apes and not the Planet of the Apes through the lens of Tim Burton. So
and what's sad is we'll use Planet of the Apes for now, but was it, I forgot, Chambers, wasn't it, who did the makeup?
Yes.
Okay, so the guy from Star Trek did the apes mask. And back then we're like, oh my God, this is so incredible. But then something else comes out with our technology and they go, yeah, that stuff's so fake looking, so horrible, but liked it then.
Yeah.
And I don't get these people who flip flop. So oh my God, Christopher Reeve's Superman is the greatest movie of all time. And then a new movie comes out and they go, yeah, that Christopher Reeve one looks so fake. Like, seriously. I'm like, dude, you can't say that this movie is the greatest thing, and then another thing comes out, and you suddenly go, this thing is no longer good. And I have friends that did that, and I'm like, yesterday you were saying it was the greatest movie of all time, and now this other one came out, and you're like, it looks fake, it looks dumb. So which is it?
Right.
So but I think what Chambers did with his makeup, I met Mark Leonard, who played Urko, and obviously Sarek, and among other things. The guy had an incredible career. At a mall in either 90 or 91 in Burlington, and they were trying to promote Star Trek The Next Generation being on the air or something. Right. So this guy made up this mock bridge in the middle of the mall. With two walls that were painted and a captain's chair that pretty much looked exactly like Kirk's original chair. And Mark came to do these skits with us, and this person wrote a Star Trek script in 10, 15 minutes. It didn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. So we had 2 seconds to learn the script, and no one could do that in 2 seconds. So most of us all had the script in our hand. And so I was playing a really bad Captain Kirk, and had a long hair and a ponytail. And, I'm sitting there and I'm going, Mr. Spock, And so one of my lines was, why are they willing to attack for your release? Right. And Mark Leonard, instead of doing his whatever line he had, he goes, damned if I know. Right? And he goes, you remind me of someone I know, Captain, because I'm doing this whole thing or whatever. So then there's a scene where the ship supposedly gets hit and everybody does this. And I ad-lib, I knew we should have put in seatbelts. And he goes, I knew if I got near that captain, I'd overact. And the whole audience dies laughing. But he actually brought his prosthetic, and he was showing people. Yeah, so he had it, and he's like, somebody said something about Planet of the Apes, and he goes, "Funny you should mention that." And he's like, "They put this thing here, and they put this thing here," and he kind of explained the whole process of that or whatever. But that was pretty cool to see an actual what was left from probably the TV series, because that's where he played Urko or whatever. But it was just like, wow, this is like, 30 years old or whatever. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I always wish that the TV show had they'd given it a little bit of a longer leash, so that where they canceled it after 13 episodes. They thought, I think maybe they would have figured some things out, and maybe it would have lasted longer. It would have gotten. I mean, I always enjoyed it very much, but I think maybe it would have been even stronger if they'd had more time to work on it, a second season or a full season order, what have you. But I started watching it, so
I liked it. My friend John didn't. I don't think he didn't not like it, but I just think he said something to the effect of, "How far can you go with two humans and an ape just running from town to town? Eventually, you're going to run out of stories."
You're going to run out of stuff.
That was kind of his take on it. But I've always go ahead, Chris.
I said, you're going to run out of stuff to do pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I've always liked those run from somebody shows, like the Incredible Hulk. He's got to keep moving from town to town, to town because somebody's after him. And it was kind of The Fugitive and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always thought that was cool. It's like you're running from somebody, but on the way, even though somebody's looking for you, you're trying to help people out. So you didn't do this thing that you're being accused of, whether it be The Fugitive or the Incredible Hulk or the apes people or whatever, but you're like, I didn't do this thing, but I got to keep moving, but these people need my help and I have to stop and help them. And I always thought that was a cool premise for a show, but I enjoyed the Apes TV series or whatever.
I did too. I always just felt that it suffered in the sense that, we don't often think about it, but if you go back to the Apes films, they were actually pretty intense and violent. If you go back, watch the end of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, all the mutants pull their off, and Charlton Heston gets shot, and he's shot in the chest, and then he destroys the world. He's like, oh my God! I've never, as a kid, I was like, holy cow, right? And then you get to the TV series, and it's like you can't really do anything. So it's not even the premise. I mean, I think the premise was fine, but it's like all the things we saw, riots in cities and battles between mutants and humans, and the first one, that hunt through the cornfield, and Taylor gets shot in the throat, and the blood is fountaining out, and it's like you couldn't do any of that on TV. So it's like you kind of watch it, you're kind of like, oh, it feels kind of kiddie compared to what they could do in the movies, because the movies, I mean, to their everlasting credit, didn't really play it as kids stuff. Even the third one, which had a lot of humor, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, I mean, I think that was like trauma city for a lot of kids like me. At the end of it, Zira and Cornelius get shot. Cornelius is, he can't breathe. You see him struggling to breathe after he's shot in the lungs, and he falls off like a crow's nest on a ship, and his body hits the deck with a thud. It's like, oh my gosh, this 20 minutes ago, this is a funny movie about apes and humans in modern day Los Angeles, and it ends, in this catastrophic violent way, and a
dark turn for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, oh my gosh, I love the Apes movies for that. And I just think the TV show, and I obviously I love Roddy McDowall, but I thought the actors playing Burke and Verdon were great. Mark Leonard was great. Booth Coleman was Dr. Zayas. He was great. But it's just it's like they were so straitjacketed and like any kind of story they could tell. It was just like, it just felt like a real, I don't want to say dumbed down, because it wasn't dumb.
It was watered down for television.
Watered down is the right word.
Yes.
That's the way to say it. Yes. Because it wasn't dumb. It was good. I liked a lot of the episodes.
Yeah, but there was a lot they couldn't do on television back then. Now, forget it. Everything's off the table.
That's right. If they did it today, it would be like Game of Thrones. It would be like,
in prime time.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because, they had to hire great actors, because right now we're talking, my mouth is going way all over but they could only open a little bit. So they had to be such great actors that everything they did projected through all that makeup and stuff, which was, they always pick the right people to do that. But what's funny is, you guys just said, today we got Game of Thrones and all this stuff, and like the stuff before, they're like, oh, we can't do that on the air. Well, there's two reversals of that. Like you couldn't do the violent thing. Now it's violence, but like put a show like All in the Family on the air today, it probably wouldn't.
Oh yeah, that's not going to fly at all.
It's funny how this thing wasn't acceptable, and now it's all over the place. This thing was acceptable, and now is totally not acceptable. So it's so weird how we traded one thing for another. One thing is now acceptable, but the thing that was acceptable, like Archie Bunker and Jeffersons and Sanford and Son and all that kind of risque stuff, is like we can't put that stuff on the table anymore because we will offend too many people. So it's just so weird how we kind of like switched the two things around.
Oh, it's weird. Our society has turned a lot of things, because really now TV shows fill the space that movies used to fill. The TV shows are the things that can go in depth with things, that you can go into detail. And the movies are now like the TV shows, where they're very generic. And it's like, you have to have it has to be a great opening first weekend or you're done. So like everything blanderized, the movies, which used to be more risque, are now like blanderized to the point of, with the Marvel movies, like there's no sex in any of them. It's like, oh, this is like a Marvel cinematic universe and people don't have sex in them. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Not that you're going to show sex, but
right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh wow, there used to be able to be like romances and
there's no romance in it. Unless you count the Hulk and Black Widows kind of will they, won't they, moonlighting type of thing.
As it, so and it's like, it's not even necessarily about sex, but it's just about like relationships. There are no real human relationships in those stories, because it's like, no, we can't do that because we have to have the kids show up and we have to have the adults show up and Granny's going to show up and we need to make, we need to make $1 billion from this. So whereas TV shows, you just say, okay, there were 3 networks, and how do we grab the most people? And that they blanderized, homogenized everything. Now that's what movies are doing. And TV shows are now like, oh no, we only need 500,000 people. We can do whatever we want. We can do Walking Dead, we can do Game of Thrones, we can do The Sandman. So, speaking of how things have flipped, it's really interesting, I think, how television and film have flipped, and TV is now the place where critics go to see things that they think are worthwhile, and films are kind of treated like,
Yeah, and I mean now, like some of the TV shows, which again you just said 3 networks used to be, growing up, we get CBS station because we were closer to that one. NBC we could kind of get fairly decent, and then like your ABC, you're like twisting rabbit ears and standing on one leg and like, I'll hold it for this show, you hold it for the next, like it was ridiculous. But now you got the the like TMCs and the Netflixes and the Hulus, and you can do anything you want on those. You just can't do that on a broadcast station. So it's really weird. So more people are like, I have Netflix, I have Hulu, I have Apple TV, I have Paramount Plus, I have Disney, I have this, I have that, because I want to be able to watch this stuff that no one else will let me watch. And like an episode of Stranger Things is like an hour movie is what it is. I mean, it's like, it's not even a TV show anymore. It's like literally a short movie, and then the movie's going to continue next week. So it's like, when they show King Kong on TV and on ABC or whatever, and they're like, tonight, the main event, King Kong. And then it like stops and it's like, tune in tomorrow night for the dramatic conclusion of King Kong. So now they do the same thing with like Stranger Things. It's like, it's an hour, 20 minutes. They're not, episodic TV used to be like 53 minutes or whatever. Now, like an episode of The Mandalorian could be 32 minutes, 47 minutes, or 52 minutes, or an hour and 10 minutes. Like there's no runtime anymore. They just kind of go, however long this is how long it is.
Yeah, the formula's been thrown out the window.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's crazy too, because you think about so one of my real loves on television was at the end of the 90s. It was Chris Carter's Millennium, his follow-up to the X-Files. And it only lasted 3 seasons because it wasn't well rated. But like just 5 years later, if a show got the ratings Millennium had 5 years earlier, it would be like the biggest hit in all of cable. So I always think about that. I think, oh my gosh, it's like, imagine being, the creator, the people behind that show, and you create this great work for 3 years, and the network tells you not enough people are watching it, right? And then like 5 years later, The Walking Dead premieres with like a scant percentage of what all of your episodes were getting rated, but it's hailed as like the greatest cable hit ever, and it lasts 11 years. I mean, and I love The Walking Dead. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. It's like, it's so crazy how our scales have changed. What used to not be a hit is now a massive hit. Anything with Millennium's numbers now would be like through the roof, which is, just crazy to think about how I say balkanized, like how the TV landscape has become balkanized and fractured, and like so many little percentages to be had, and such micro targeting to demographics, where in all previous decades you had to target to every demographic. Yep. But now that's what the films are doing. Now that's what movies are doing. They're targeting to every demographic so that they can make their $1 billion or whatever.
There's so many, and I think it was the 80s, but 70s and 80s had some shows that like I thought were great, and it's like 8 episodes later they're like, yeah, no, it's done.
Yeah.
Otherworld.
I loved Otherworld. Oh my God. 1985.
8 episodes, but it was such a great concept. But it's like no, done. Wizards and Warriors, done. Like all these shows.
Police Squad.
Yeah.
Police Squad was great. 6 episodes. That's all we got.
I know. And it's like, who are the people saying these aren't good shows?
Yeah.
And then you get a show. No, don't. And I mean, I think it was a good show, but like Manifest, right? The show gets canceled, and they're like, please bring us back. We need more, and they brought him back for one more season or whatever. But it's like, sometimes the fans will be like, no, don't, Superstore. I love that. But then as soon as America left, it kind of was like not the same. So then it just kind of like was like bye. But you get a show that's so good that has potential, like Otherworld, and it's like, oh, what do you mean it's canceled? And then you get a show like The Flash starring John Wesley Shipp, and they go, let's put it on Mondays at 8. Let's put it on Wednesdays at 9. Let's put it on Fridays at 7. Let's put it on Saturdays at 4. Let's put it over here on Tuesdays at 11. And you're like, I don't know when the show is on. Like, they just kept moving around. And then they canceled it because of low ratings. Well, stop moving it around.
Right. Like, nobody liked it. Right. It's not like nobody liked it. No one could ever find it. Right.
Yeah, no one could find it, exactly.
But I love that Flash. It was a great show. And then it was like, wait, I missed it? Why was it on Tuesday? Like...
No, it's really weird for my son because we have watched so many of these things. So we went back one Christmas and watched, from like 1972 or something, The Immortal. This one season show about this guy who had this special blood that made him immortal, and he was being hunted. So it was one of those fugitive type shows. Yeah. And it just kind of meandered for like 20 episodes, and then it just stopped. And Joel's like, it doesn't have an ending. I'm like, Joel, these shows never had an ending.
Yeah.
They never ended. They just stopped.
They just stopped. You're like, but what
happened? What happened to the guy? Did they, it's like, so I don't tell you.
Speaking of old shows, what do you feel? And be honest. I mean, the new Quantum Leap. Have you seen the little teaser things for it? And what do you say? Are you all excited or?
I don't know. It's so hard. I think for longtime fans, it's really hard to broach these things because you have so much affection for what came before, and you like that dynamic so much.
Yes.
And sort of that's in a box, but you have to be able to sort of take that out of the box and dissect and be like, but the idea of Quantum Leap is interesting. And yes, could there be a Quantum Leap universe? And could this be that? And would I like that? But it's really hard to broach those things like that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Space 1999, and right in the title, it's got a built-in expiration date, right? 1999.
Yeah.
But like the kind of stories it tells were so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I still love it. But then I think, John, if someone said today we're going to reboot it, and I think, do I want that? or do I not want that? Do I just want to say, this was a product of the 70s, and you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice, right? But then I think, well, that's what people said about Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it worked. So, it just turns me all around. I'll be honest with you. Anytime there's a reboot, it just turns me all around because I have these feelings for the original. Then I watch the new one and I think, oh, there's some things interesting in this, but it's not the same. And then I think, does it have to be the same? Oh my gosh! So, like, I can buy the idea of a quantum leap universe, but will I feel,
attached?
Right. Well, it's obviously it's not going to have Dean Stockwell and Sam.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So then is it? So is it just? Oh gosh. Right.
Yeah. So Space 2099. There you go.
But then I think, oh my gosh, well, I'm such a snob because every time they remake Dracula, I'll be like, okay, I want to go see Dracula. Or every time they redo Hamlet, I'll be like, yeah, I'll see another take on Hamlet. So is it the story or is it my connection to that time and place that I'm looking to recapture? And honestly, that's a hard thing to know for sure. And I always say, like, I'll know it when I see it. Like, I had a really hard time with the remake of Battlestar Galactica because I loved the original Battlestar Galactica so much. Can I objectively say there were some things that show did well? Yes, I can. But did it give me the same feelings as I did in 1978 when I watched Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, Lauren Green, and I encountered that as a 10-year-old for the first time in my life? It didn't capture that for me. But then I think, could anything have captured that for me at age 45?
Right.
I don't know, man. So that was a terrible non-answer, but I'm going to be honest with you.
No. We talked about the Battlestar last week with Rich, and I think he said he enjoyed it. But I watched it like that like mini series before.
Right.
So I watched that and I was like, yeah. And then I'd never watched Quantum Leap when it was originally on because I felt that it was a ripoff of Voyagers, another show that got canceled.
Oh, wow.
So
right.
My girlfriend and I will watch a Quantum Leap once a week or whatever because we have all these things we're watching. So it's like Quantum Leap night. And I am like, why did I never watch the show? And right. I just wish I had watched it then so that if I had known that Dean Stockwell was going to be at a Comic-Con near me, I would have wanted to meet that guy because I absolutely love Dean Stockwell. I mean, there's some actors that when they're acting, you don't think that they're acting. And Dean Stockwell and Quantum Leap never seemed like he was acting. Everything he did seemed like he was that guy and he was there to help the guy. And everything he said wasn't like something that someone wrote out for him to say. It was like he was saying this stuff and it made sense. And he had passion behind everything. And I was like, oh my God, I love this guy. And now, unfortunately, he is gone. And I wish I would have had a chance to just say, wow, you're brilliant, So I don't think, there's talk of Ernie Hudson or whatever. I don't think anybody can be Dean Stockwell. And I don't think anybody's trying to be.
Right.
My girlfriend's parents joke with me all the time that they're watching the new MacGyver, which I won't watch. And they're like, oh, hey, are you...
You had mentioned Next Generation before, as far as compared to the older original Star Trek series. Have you had the opportunity to watch any of the new ones? Specifically, Strange New Worlds is what I want to get your take on.
Yes. I'm going to tell you, I love Strange New Worlds.
Me too. All right. Love it. I'm loving it.
I'm not an easy sell, let me tell you. I have a real, and I know a lot of people love it, so forgive me. I have a real hard time with Lower Decks. I just do. Sorry.
I enjoy it. I think it's for what it is. It's funny as hell.
And that's it. I think I'm so humorless. I have a hard time with Star Trek in that venue. I liked what I saw of Prodigy, but I have loved Strange New Worlds. I have felt about that. In a way I haven't felt about any Star Trek series in a long time. And I just love it and enjoy it. And I know they are going off canon with the Gorn. and a couple other things. And I find myself sort of at this stage in my life not caring.
Not caring.
Right. And being like, oh my gosh, you told a great story. And, no spoilers, but the last episode of the season was just magnificent. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And
because I wondered, I'm like, how are they going to get there?
Yeah,
this is how they're going to do it.
Yes. And the thing is, and I know this is such an unpopular view, and I make so many enemies with this, but I watched Strange New Worlds and I loved it. And I thought this is great. It was dynamic. And I say, the people who are sort of naysayers for the show, I say, go back and watch the first season of Next Generation and then tell me Strange New Worlds isn't good.
Right? Yeah.
Pick any 12 from Next Gen. And then what else? Right now everybody's loving Deep Space Nine. Great. I'm so glad Deep Space Nine is having its day in the sun. Go back and watch any 12 episodes of Deep Space Nine's first season. You tell me either one of those are better than Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds is fantastic. I mean, this is their first season and they're knocking it out of the park. But traditionally, first seasons are pretty rough for Star Trek spinoffs.
No, this one's had me smiling every episode. I just my wife's like, you love this stuff. I'm like, you have no idea, sweetheart.
I do too. I watch it. My wife is like, what are you doing? You're like out of your mind. I'm like, I know. I just loved it. I mean,
it's fun. It's a fun series. I'm glad. Very fun series.
It captures the sense of fun of the original Star Trek that almost no other series does. No other Star Trek series. It's got that sense of fun and adventure, and we can go anywhere this week kind of thing. That and I like it because again, I love this season. I don't think every episode worked. There was the medieval episode. Which
I didn't. I was like, I'll give them one. Everything else has been stellar. So
but I think that was. I don't know. I think they were trying to do something like something that the original series did.
Yes.
I think they took a couple original series ideas and kind of said, what if we took this, and this, and kind of put it together or whatever. But that one kind of threw me for a loop. But
it didn't work for me, but I said, you know what? I love so much that they did it because they're not bound to this one story, which serialized. They can go and they can go try anything for a week, and I'll be there with them. And when they fail, it's okay because next week they'll be somewhere else. And that's really what the original Star Trek was. I have gotten very tired of these shows which are hyper serialized, and so it really all depends on how they stick the landing. And like 9 times out of 10, they don't stick the landing. I mean, look, I know the House of Dragon is really popular right now, but people were pissed about the end of Game of Thrones.
Oh, that was a throwaway. They just said we're done. That's my take. I was not a fan on how they wrapped that up.
Well, and the remake of Battlestar Galactica really pissed people off too, and so it should. It was like a really bad ending. It's like I am a space traveler and I'm deciding to give up indoor plumbing. That was like basically the ending of the new Battlestar Galactica. It's like what? It's like okay, we're giving up all technology, including indoor plumbing. What are you talking about? This was
I could never get into the reboot. I couldn't do it. Caught a couple episodes here and there, and I'm like, it's not for me. Just couldn't do it.
Strange New Worlds, going back to the standalones of Star Trek, where it's just take me somewhere this week. Tell me an interesting story. And if you do that enough, when you mess up because you were, whatever, it just didn't come together, it's okay because next week we're going somewhere else. And it doesn't all have to be intricately tied.
Yeah, they don't have to go. I mean, there's enough of the story that they tie in together each week with the characters, but not enough. Like, honestly, if I had missed that episode, it wouldn't have impacted what I knew about the story going forward. So
right. So I have to confess, I'm having that love affair with Strange Worlds because I feel like I haven't enjoyed a Star Trek show like this in a long time. Yeah,
I grew up obviously with the original, watching with my dad, and I think the first episode I remember ever seeing was Balance of Terror with Mark Leonard. We talked a little bit last week with Rich about Star Trek, and I brought up the photo novels, and he's like, "You mean these right here?" And he's like pointing to them, and he's like, "Wait, no, I can't figure out how to point or whatever." But the photo novels for me were cool because when an episode wasn't on, you could read an episode, But when Next Generation came on, Encounter at Farpoint, I went, what is this? Like, what is this? Like, this isn't the Star Trek I know. So then I watched the next episode, and then I bowed out for like 3 years.
Okay.
And then my friend's like, you watching the Next Generation? I'm like, that show is crap, man. And he's like, no, it's really good. And I'm like, no, it's really not. And he's like, no, it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. So he goes, here, take this tape and watch it. And he'd been taping the episodes on like VHS or whatever. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So it was third season, and now you got Worf is in charge and of the security and whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, this show is wicked good. So then I started watching it, and then I had to go back and painfully watch the first couple of seasons just because I'm like, how did they get here to make it so good?
Right.
I thought Deep Space Nine, and I think, have you seen What We Left Behind?
Yeah, I really enjoyed
it. Very sad. But I think they nailed it. Everybody was like, this isn't Star Trek. And it ended up becoming most people's favorite incarnation of Star Trek. And I think what they did with the trying to answer 5 things at once here, but what they did with the medieval episode was it was almost like a holodeck episode without a holodeck.
Yes.
you know, like that's what I'm like, are they on a holodeck? Like what? I was trying to figure that out. Right. I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So it was like a holodeck episode without having a holodeck. But yeah, I think every Star Trek starts off slow, except for Strange New Worlds. Just like the first episode, I was like, my girlfriend doesn't even like Star Trek, and I'm like, watch this with me. And she's like, okay. And then she's like, hey, that was pretty good. So
yeah. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel like it has really taken off. And if you think that, back in the day of Deep Space Nine and Star Trek: The Next Generation, a season was 24 episodes, and so we're talking about what you had to stick with Next Generation through 48 episodes. Before it really, before it hit any kind of regular stride. And here we are, whatever it is, 10, 12 episodes into Strange New Worlds. And they've already had like that. The last episode of the first season is a masterpiece. I mean, it can compete with any Star Trek ever created in their first 12, in their first 10, however many it was. I don't remember if it was 10 or 12.
Right. Yeah.
But they've already done one that stands up, and I just think that's amazing. I hope they don't lose it.
No, it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to next season already. Picard, I'm kind of like, I'm in, but it's not like Strange New Worlds. I'm all vested in that.
Yeah, me too.
I watched a couple Picards and same thing. I was like, what is this? The first season of Next Generation? Like, it didn't like, I need something when I watch anything like Stranger Things or, the Quantum Leap or whatever it is, the first episode's got to do something.
Right.
It can't be like, oh, by episode 7, we'll figure out where we are. No, you need to figure out where you are right then so that I want to get to episode 7.
Right.
And, if you can write something like, so what a writer, in my opinion, and I'm a writer as well, but what a writer needs to do is write the first couple episodes out and then go, okay, I'm throwing the first 4 away and we're going to start with episode 5. Like, no, but I'm serious. Like, that's what you kind of need to do because the show doesn't get going until it gets here. So write this all out and then start there. Like,
because you're going to lose viewership.
Get it? Like, boom. And I'm like, I'm in. Like, you know. But
no, and I thought Strange New Worlds, the early episodes were really good. I liked the first one. I like how they used the day the Earth stood still in that. I thought that was very clever how they brought that into Star Trek. And what was the second episode? I felt like it was even better. It was the music one. It was the asteroid, and Uhura and Spock had to like sing to this.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, those like they were almost like ghosts, right?
Yeah. Or was that maybe that was the second? Was that the second? I can't remember. There was the one with they've all blended together.
They had to go down to that planet where all those old scientists used to be. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, I was thinking the one where they had
there was a weird.
There was a comet that was
in the middle of and they accidentally touched it, and it made music.
Yes,
so Uhura had to figure out the.
How to talk to it with the music. Yes. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yes, but it had this real sort of interesting philosophical thing because the aliens who they thought were so terrible may have actually known something about the comet that they didn't know, like what kind of life form it was. And so I thought that's like a great Star Trek story where they flip the perspective on you. Yep. We think we know what's going on, and then like you get some information like, oh, we didn't know what was going on. that's great stuff. So I loved it. I could rave about that all the time to my wife.
I'm glad I brought it up.
Yes, I'm so glad.
One of my favorite going to Deep Space Nine episodes was called The Visitor, where Tony Todd plays older Jake Sisko. Ooh, I can't talk. Yep. And like, because he gets his Avery Brooks gets caught in that weird thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And I met Tony Todd at the con, and everybody's going, "Oh, Candyman, oh this, oh that," and I walked up to him and I just said, "Dude, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The Visitor, you made me cry."
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, dude, that was the best thing I've ever seen. Like, and he's like, you know, he's like, "Thank you," or whatever. But like that just, I can't watch that episode without tearing up. Like, what a powerful performance on that one.
That is my favorite episode of Deep Space Nine. I love
really, The Visitor?
Yes, it is. I love
it. That's so funny. Yeah.
I love that. I just it you know, again, I have a son, and the father-son dynamic. Oh God.
And he's like a baby. Talking to that reporter. He's just like, and then my dad, and I'm like, and I'm like, I can't hear anything else he's saying for 5 minutes because I'm in tears and sobbing or whatever. But it was such a great episode. I mean, that's my favorite. And then my second would be Trials and Tribulations, where they conveniently did that green screen effect thing that was just amazing.
Yes, that was astonishing at the time to have Sisko meet Kirk, and that was just great. And of course, the one they set in the 1950s, is that what? And then they were talking about like sort of racism in the pulp science fiction magazine, and what was that, Far Beyond the Stars? Is that what it was called?
And they all played like reporters and stuff.
Yes, they're all journalists at this magazine. Yeah, that was great. No, I mean, I love Deep Space Nine. So, you know, but I always say, like, there are two Deep Space Nines. There's like the first 2 or 3 seasons, which are meh. and then the next 4 seasons, which are really great. Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh wow, you know, just start there. You know,
right. Yeah.
When Worf boards the station, from there on, it's gold. You know,
that's true. Yeah,
there's some early good ones too. Of course, there's the was it the duet episode? There's some good stuff early on, but not in any kind of you know, continuous. You have to find the jewels, so to speak.
Right, the one where Sarek becoming really emotional and affecting everybody on the.
That's right.
The Next Generation one,
Yes, that was called Sarek, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, but I noticed something the other day because I noticed things. If you look at the word Star Trek, the word Sarek is actually in the word Star Trek. So like you just got to like look for it. But I was like, that's kind of neat.
That is interesting. Well,
things that I noticed, I'm like, that says Sarek. If you take the T off and you get rid of that letter, you know. So I wonder if, like, you know, maybe Gene Roddenberry was looking for a character name and he looked at Star Trek and said, "Hey, that says Sarek." You know, we'll never know. But I think Gene and Rod Serling were two of the brightest people of our time.
Oh, me too.
You know, just visionaries.
I've been thinking a lot about Rod Serling lately because it's the end of summer. My son's going into high school, into 10th grade, and there's that episode of Twilight Zone called Walking Distance. I don't know if you remember that, where this guy like walks back into his hometown, but when he's a kid again, and he's sort of really upset. He's having a midlife crisis as an adult, and he tries to like contact his younger self to say like, live your life, don't end up like me, like you will. But he's taken aside by his father, who's dead in the present but alive then. He says, don't mess with yourself here, you know, don't, because we all only get one summer. You know, it's just a great show. Rod Serling is, you know, fantastic. People don't always talk about that one because it's not one of those like with a, you know, like a sort of memorable twist ending kind of thing, but it's just such an affecting story. You know, and I think it expressed what he was sort of going through. I mean, he died so young. You know, worked himself to death. But I mean, he wrote how many episodes of The Twilight Zone? Yeah. You know, I mean,
he's responsible for Planet of the Apes, technically.
Right. I mean, he just has a brilliant body of work, and I love that stuff. I love watching The Twilight Zone to this day. I love if I know I've got 22 minutes and I have time to myself, I'm going to go watch Twilight Zone.
And you know, they've tried to redo it a couple times, as we know, and then you know, I think Spielberg did with Amazing Stories was good. I loved Amazing Stories. That was good. And then obviously got the Outer Limits or whatever. But every incarnation since the original Twilight Zone just didn't have Rod Serling, and that's what was missing. Kenneth Johnson, who did V and was responsible for Incredible Hulk, the thing about writing is it's gotta hit you in the feels. Like you gotta come out way from an episode of something and get something out of it, as besides an explosion or a car chase or whatever. You gotta get a message or something that really moves you, and that's what Kenneth Johnson did with the Hulk episodes and with V, and that's what certainly Rod Serling tried to do. Is like, we're heading down this path, and there's a way to stop it, or you're getting older, but don't forget, you're when you were a kid kind of stuff or whatever, just to kind of make you go, okay, yeah, make you feel good or whatever. And those are the things that those are the stories that I, Last Starfighter, we had Catherine Mary Stewart on, and we talked about that, but that's just such a great movie, such a great script. And we've talked about this a lot on all our yesterdays, is write a good script and then put some CGI and stuff in it. Don't figure out what CGI stuff you want first,
build a script around it,
and then make a script around it. And that's what the Last Starfighter did. This kid is in this trailer park that he's going nowhere, and like, why am I here? And then there's something bigger on the horizon for him, and those are the stories that I like watching on TV or in movies more than like, oh, look at Iron Man flying and he just destroyed a building. Like, I'd rather see something that has heart and stuff. So yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think if a story doesn't move us here, I don't know why it's telling us anything, right? I don't know why it exists if it isn't able to hit us where we live and make us think about our lives. I mean, I think that's the core of what good writing is. And, I think sometimes, certainly you think, if film is this thing where, and I think Chris Pine said this about the Star Trek reboot, he says, like, don't go chasing $1 billion. Let's just tell a really good story.
Yep.
I think
we need to care about the characters.
Right. I think, you think, if a Star Trek movie has to make $1 billion, then it's like, oh, what, then the ship has to fly out of a volcano or what, whatever. It's like, okay, but we don't really care about that. Right? I mean, yeah, it's cool for a minute, but it's like, what's happening with Spock? What's happening?
Yes. What's happening with Spock?
Yeah, Captain. But yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people didn't like the motion picture, but it had that message. Wrath of Khan was entertaining. Didn't have as big a message, but was one of the best ones out of the lot. But then, Search for Spock really was like, oh my God, we're going to find Spock. So then that got you back feeling again. And certainly the whale one kind of got you thinking again. Star Trek For the Voyage Home, we call it the whale one. Everybody, I like the whale one.
Whales.
Yeah, whales. Star Trek whales.
Star Trek movie, the whale one. Like,
right, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, a story needs to, to not always, but it should have something that gets you. Like, I wrote a love story, I've written a horror movie and a zombie movie, and obviously the horror movie is a horror movie. You're not supposed to feel anything really, but you do because of the way I wrote it. And then the zombie movie, same kind of thing. I threw some stuff in there that would make you go, oh no, not that guy, or like, I liked him or something kind of thing. In that whole stuff that's happening, you got to throw in something that's going to make the audience feel for these characters or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a lot of great movies like that anymore, or as much as there used to be. Somewhere in Time.
Oh yeah,
great movie.
Yeah, Maria.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one that's just like, like he pulls that penny out and then he's like, no, and then he's gone, and you just feel like, he can't get back, and it's just it tears your heart apart or whatever. So,
well, I think you were smart to bring up the motion picture. I mean, I really love the motion picture. I saw it. I was in 4th grade, and it captured my imagination. I mean, I know it's not fast paced, right? But something about it, that's the Star Trek movie where you kind of feel like you're there, like on a ship. There's a lot of first person stuff. We're looking at what they're seeing.
Yeah, a lot of bright colors, a lot of bright lights.
It's I don't know. So I really like it. I know people say it's boring or slow or whatever, but something about it just captured my imagination. Like the idea of this group of people encountering something that is completely unknown. Now you can say, well, hey, then it turned out to be like something like, from an episode of The Changeling or whatever. But like for a lot of that movie, it's just like scintillating, like, what is this? It's like this dark cloud and we're going deeper and deeper inside it. And then, I love the idea. It's like Solaris or something like that. We get there and we find something that's us or part of us, that the mystery we face is that mirror being held up to us. And so I love that. I loved the recent recut of the film, and it's sort of improvement of the picture and especially the sound quality. So I think the motion picture is great and a masterpiece in its own right, though I know it's not a popular masterpiece like Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, and I was just thankful that we got Star Trek. I forgot what grade I was in. It was probably 9th or 10th grade, maybe. And like every comic book either had the ad where it was like rainbow colored with their faces, or it had the one with the ship with all the little blocks going across with all their little faces or whatever. Every comic book, every magazine. And like you'd read, oh my God, there's the ad again. There's the ad again, And I didn't, when I first saw it, I'm like, why'd they change the uniforms? Like that's the first thing. Why'd they change the uniform? Why'd they change the ship? But, you forget at that age that movies are big and TV is small. And to do a movie, everything had to be in your face and look, spectacular or whatever. So that's why they had to redesign everything or whatever. But I wasn't a fan of those uniforms, and no one else was either, because they obviously immediately changed or whatever. But it was just good to see all your old friends back.
It was, but hey, look, I'm going to say this. I'm a huge William Shatner fan. I really respect what he did in the motion picture. He got like buff for the motion picture. He's in his white T-shirt, and you can just see his guns, and he looks great in that. He looks great in that Admiral's uniform. Those uniforms are not very flattering, but Shatner made them flattering. Which for him, obviously people make jokes about, his appearance, things like that. He looked great in the motion picture. I
had
fantastic
2 sets of pajamas. One had yellow sleeves and one had blue. And so the sleeves start here and they're yellow or blue. And then this part was white, and one had Spock on it and one had Kirk, and they were like the motion picture pajamas or whatever. So I was like, yeah, get the pajamas. But then, the trading cards came out.
Well, hold on 1 second. I got to show you. So going back to the motion
if you have these pajamas.
Here we go.
He's like, these pajamas? I'm going to be like, are you kidding me?
So if you had those pajamas, right?
Yeah.
You had those pajamas, then you were going to bed thinking about Star Trek. Well, then you want to have the plush Mr. Spock and the plush Captain Kirk. See, they're little like,
oh wow!
Now are those old school or those new? Are those from the 70s or from nowadays?
No, from 1979. These are Star Trek the motion picture Knickerbocker plush Kirk and Spock.
Wow!
Awesome.
Why? I said it's like a teddy bear, Joe. I said, you mean they went to sleep like holding Kirk and Spock? Yes, that's exactly what it was. There we go.
Wow.
Kirk and Spock teddy bears.
That's
exactly.
awesome.
It's like, I just love that. I just love that they made for the motion picture. That's when all the good, Star Trek merchandising after the TV series came out. They hardly released any toys for any of the later films, but Star Trek the motion picture, like everything. In here I've got my son has the Vectrex with the Star Trek game. There's like Microvision with the Star Trek the motion picture game. What else? Puzzles, dinner trays, drinking cups. Yeah. The action figures. Okay, here we go.
The communicators.
Okay. Be right back.
Here's one of the great.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
Star Trek the motion picture bridge. Can you see it? Yeah,
that is great. Oh yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah. So it's like, oh my gosh.
I used to have a long time ago, but it got in storage and it got moldy, so I had to throw it out. But the Mego Enterprise Bridge where you spun the
You spun it around, they would transport. That was awesome.
Right here, but I've got black hole toys on it. I don't know if that's like.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so like Mego, had the Star Trek line and the Planet of the Apes line.
Right.
So I'd beam down to the planet from Star Trek and be playing with the apes and stuff.
Yep.
And then when I wasn't beaming down, I'd use the apes as Klingons. I'm like, they can be the Klingons
because they were the same size. So
they had the same bandolier on them and the same.
I know. But I had to finally throw all that stuff out because I moved several times, and a lot of times my stuff was in storage that wasn't like temperature controlled. Gotcha. And as much as I wanted to just keep it, I'm like, this mold is just going to not go away, and throw this stuff. But
every third move is the equivalent of a fire.
Yeah. But,
I had the pride of my collection was this gigantic cardboard stand-up of William Shatner from Star Trek V from a video store, and he's holding like the video cassette for Star Trek V. But I mean, it was giant, and like the Enterprise was behind him with a planet. It says Star Trek V, and I took that with me like every time I moved. And then at some point, it was in my garage and like got eaten by moths, and I was just heartbroken that I no longer had that giant cardboard stand-up of William Shatner from The Final Frontier.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of stuff because of leaky sheds. I met Robin Williams in '83, and he signed 2 posters to Randy Robin Williams, and my shed leaked, and they're both gone. So but I look at it this way: if I die tomorrow, those posters won't matter because I'm dead. So I try to think. I try to go. Well, you got it. Won't matter what poster you have.
You can't take it with you. Right?
Yeah. The other day I was at this little thrift store and I found these 2 things, which I thought were pretty amazing. I probably don't find either one of these around very often, but I was like, the first one I saw will be the second one I show you. The first one I'll show you was the second one I saw, but it's the Somewhere in Time album soundtrack, which I was like, what?
Would you pay for that? Like $3?
Right.
5.
Oh, not bad. That's not bad. Thrift stores, you get some awesome stuff.
The one I saw first, though, was this one.
Oh,
yeah.
I got that poster.
I saw that and I said, must have.
Oh,
and I'm like,
man.
how much are these? And she's like, $5. And I'm like, sold. And I hear this is not like impossible to find, but it's one of those rare, hard to find albums. So I was like totally stoked that I found those 2 things. But
that's pretty fantastic. That is awesome.
John Barry, I think that one of his best scores, and correct me if you disagree, but I think the score to King Kong was probably one of the best scores ever.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking in my head, I hope he's going to say King Kong.
That opening scene, Jeff Bridges loses his wallet or whatever, and he does that whole little thing, and then it kind of pans up to the ship, and it goes, gong, gong. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, it's just from then on, that's such a great score. And then it says King Kong, and then it goes, boom, boom, or whatever. And I'm like, this guy's right up there, in my opinion, that score, at least for King Kong, right up there with John Williams. But that's a great score.
Absolutely. I'm a huge defender of that King Kong movie. I know people like hate it, but
I love it.
I love it. And again, that just shows you again that and I think that for me, like, helped shape my consciousness because I loved it so much, but all the older fans hated it and said, it's not as good as the original. And so they just absolutely, shat on it, but I loved it. I thought, but there's beautiful stuff in it, and so I kind of learned like, okay, let's not be that fan who's always going to like something new comes along and, face it for what it is. And if you can like it, and if you can't, that's okay too. But let people love the things they love.
Right. I have my top 3 movies. Number 1, It's a Wonderful Life. You'll never beat that. You'll never beat that movie. I mean, a guy who's down on his luck and just, is giving up hope and it's just like, I shouldn't even be here. And then it shows you why he should be. And if any movie hits you in the feels, it's that one. My second favorite movie and most watched movie of all time, over 500 viewings, is Tron from 1982.
Oh, you love
that movie. Absolutely love that movie.
Yeah, he's a Tron fan for sure.
And my third favorite movie of all time, King Kong from 1976.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So I could watch Tron and King Kong for like put it on a 24-hour thing, and I could just sit there and watch it and never get bored of it. I recently was able to get a hold of Rick Baker, and he signed some stuff for me. And on one of the DVD covers he wrote Beast Wishes instead of Best Wishes, which I thought was cool. Rick Baker. But I think he is just so, in that movie at least, underrated. He walked around in an ape suit, and they filmed it in such a way that he looked huge or whatever.
Right.
He walked around in an ape suit like most of the movie, and you look at his eyes, and he portrayed all this emotion just with his eyes, because that's all he had.
Yeah.
And he made you feel for Kong. But yet at the end of that movie, it says King Kong by Carl Rambaldi, special contributions from Rick Baker.
Yeah.
Special contributions? The guy walked around in an ape suit for the whole movie. How is that special contributions? Like, that to me, every
15 seconds, right? The Carl
the thing he made, like it's like the one shot at the fair where it's like, and that's all they can show because it was so bad.
Right.
So it's like, really? Come on.
Right.
Rick Baker was King Kong in that movie. He made you feel emotion for this ape that was taken from his home, and then killed. It's like, makes no sense, but I love that movie.
Yeah, I do too. Oh, I'm so glad that you love it too. I'm so glad that that was the movie you picked. Because I mean, John Barry's great. He's done a lot of great scores. But also in my head, when you were saying his greatest scores, I think say King Kong.
Bong, bong. Like it's insane. But yeah, Jeff Bridges' performance. I think that's where I became a Jeff Bridges fan. 1976. Yeah. Went to see King Kong with my sister and my father. God rest his soul. And just like Jeff Bridges' performance was amazing. Like when he first shows up and they're like, "Who is this guy?" And he's like, "I'm actually, I forgot what he said he was. He's like, "I'm here on this thing," and he's like, get him out of here, or whatever. And he's like, "There's a girl," and then he just, when he's looking out the thing, and he's like, "Yeah," because Kong's like smashing planes and stuff. And he's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Leave him alone, you assholes," or whatever. Like he just brought so much to that movie, But yeah, it's one of my favorite. I don't know why everybody hates it so much.
Yeah, I don't.
Jessica Lange, I fell in love with her on that movie.
Yeah, my name is Dwan. Like Don, but I switched 2 letters.
Yeah.
I'm just a mere Jack. How could anybody who saved my life be mere to me? You should go back to sleep. Freaking Jack O'Halloran's like, I got to undress her to make sure that she's okay. Like, get out of here.
Charles Grodin was fantastic in it too. He was great.
Who was?
Charles Grodin.
Oh,
Fred Wilson.
Charles Grodin.
Fred Wilson.
Like literally, I just didn't hear what he said, but like I would say 3 weeks or maybe a month before Charles Grodin died, I didn't even know that Charles Grodin was sick. I didn't know anything about that. I talked to his wife on the phone, and I said, I'm like, "Is Charles home?" And she's like, "No, he's not." And I'm like, I'm just a big fan of his work, and one of my favorite movies of all time is King Kong, and I think his performance in that movie was like the best of the best. I'm like, he played Fred Wilson incredible. I absolutely love his performance. And she's like, "I have to agree with you," or whatever. So I talked to her.
Call me again.
No, I didn't get to never call me again this time. No restraining orders or anything. Anyways, so she was like, talk to me for like 5 minutes or whatever, and she said, "Tell me about you." And I'm like, "I'm an actor and a writer." And she's like, "I'm a writer." And I'm like, "Oh, that's, what have you written?" And we just talked for a minute. And I go, "Well, I've kept you long enough if you could just pass on to Charles how much I've enjoyed his work, especially in King Kong." And she said, "I will make sure that I tell him," or whatever. And then like a month later, it was like, Charles Grodin dies. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I didn't even know he was sick." But I at least got my message to her, which hopefully got to him, because yes, I absolutely love Charles Grodin's performance. I think it's one of his best. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff, but I think his performance in that movie was absolutely incredible, to play that guy the way he played him and make him believable. Like I was saying, like with Dean Stockwell in Quantum Leap, you don't think he's an actor, you think he is that person. And Charles Grodin pulled that off very well. But yeah, we've lost so many so many good people, and we almost lost Jeff, and thank God thank God he's doing okay. But
yeah, that's right.
But yeah, this is our show. We start here and we go there and we go there and we go here and we go there.
Come back here.
And I mean that's what it's about really is getting people who share our passion for the past, and you're the perfect guest for that because you share that same
really
stuff, like. But yeah, I mean, what one thing for you, I guess, like for me growing up, I loved Wacky Packages. I loved Starlog magazine.
Oh yes.
I love Mad magazine. I love collecting the Grease trading cards or Star Wars or whatever. Do you look back and remember something that's obviously gone now that you go, oh my God, when I was a kid, this is the thing that I love the most?
Well, I just loved the Marvel Planet of the Apes comics.
Wow.
That I thought they were fantastic. I think one of the stories was called Terror on the Planet. They not only adapted the films like that, and that was like usually like the back half of the issue, but they had their own original Planet of the Apes story, and they added like new mutants, like called the Inheritors or something like that. And I mean, I couldn't find them because I was coming along a little later after they'd been out, so I would go to these flea markets and the comic stands there, and I'd dig through racks and racks of comics, and I'd find a Planet of the Apes comic that I didn't have, a Planet of the Apes magazine that I didn't have, and in the middle of the issues they had interviews with the stars, the makeup artists, all that kind of stuff. And just we had to get up at like 5 a.m. to go to these flea markets in New Jersey and stuff, and it was always worth the trip. So I was saying I'm going to find some Planet of the Apes Marvel comic or magazine that I don't have, and I'm going to be able to like fit together my whole collection, and I just love that, and I prize that. And I remember pretending to be sick and staying home from school and just like sitting in my bed and reading comics, So for me, like I just associate that with my youth and sort of my discovery of comic books and things like that. That's very special to me.
And like I've seen, like I say, some photos of that room over there that has all that stuff in it. Now, would Star Trek be the thing you have the most of?
I'm looking right now. Yeah, I think I do have the most Star Trek. I have a lot of Space 1999 because that's close to my heart. A lot of Star Trek, some Buck Rogers, some Battlestar Galactica. But there was just more of Star Trek because in the 90s, like all the Playmate stuff, and that's what's all up there on that ceiling that I showed you a little while ago. But I've got James Bond from Moonraker. I've got the Visitor figure from V. I want to show it to you.
Nice. So in all your travels and books that you've written and connections you've made and stuff, like have you met William Shatner or why can't I think of his name? The guy from Space 1990, Martin Landau.
Yeah.
Have you met people who are your heroes from as a childhood, and then suddenly there's Martin Landau from Space 1999, or Mark Leonard from Planet of the Apes or whatever? Did you get to meet some of these people, and were you like, I mean, my God, like
it's amazing. I got to interview Martin Landau. I think in the year 2000. He's very gracious with me. We spent a lot of time talking about the show. I got to interview Catherine Schell, who played Maya in the second season, and then for me, it's just really as exciting to get to interview Johnny Byrne, who was the story editor, and Brian Johnson, who was the special effects director, and Prentice Hancock, who played Paul. With Star Trek, I got to interview Majel Barrett.
Nice.
That was a lot of fun. DC Fontana. So, I went through this phase where I was doing a lot of articles for a magazine that, of course, is now defunct called Cinescape. So, I got to do stories about Logan's Run, the series, and I got to talk to people involved with that. What else? What other ones did I do? I did, Logan's Run, Star Trek, the animated series, things like that. So in my travels, basically, I guess from maybe 2000 to about 2010, I did get to interview like sort of my heroes, people who I had, always dreamed of talking to. And I always feel sad though. I missed Roddy McDowall because I would have loved to have had the opportunity to speak to Roddy McDowall. And one of the stories I did was about Tales of the Gold Monkey, which was a show.
Yeah.
I got the box set.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Mine's here somewhere, but such a great, another one that got canceled too soon.
Right. So, I got to interview the writers, producers, some of the actors on the show. So, I mean, it's just really great to hear people's experiences and kind of get a sense of them and who they are and how they feel about these things that we enjoy so much, and to hear that they enjoyed them just as much and were just as upset, if not more so. And it wasn't about relation, and it wasn't about losing a job. It was because they loved their job. It's because they loved doing these things, that they were so much fun. So yeah, I mean, it's been really amazing when I think about my career. My first book was a nonfiction book about Space 1999, and like it's still selling well in 2022, and it came out in 1997. I mean, it's terribly out of date at this point, but and I have had the great fortune to actually write like officially licensed Space 1999 novels through Powis Media. So it's like, it's crazy for me to think about. Like I've like written myself into the story. It's like, oh, I wrote a book about it, and then I ended up writing a Space 1999 adventure that was official, and it's just like, oh wow. Sometimes I just think I am the most lucky man on earth, and anytime I have a bad day, I just remind myself of that I'm so blessed with my family and my career, and to have had the experience of I had to have this crazy office and all that, and really to have been a kid at a time when cinema and television were so imaginative. And this is a terrible thing to say because but today it's all out there and there's everything, and it's like there's so much, it's like you can't consume it all. But for us, there was this kind of scarcity. A King Kong didn't come along every day. The Planet of the Apes didn't come along every day. Space 1999, and they would come along and they wouldn't last. Yeah. And so there's this kind of scarcity and specialness to it that like maybe you don't feel now, whatever it is on the 30th Marvel movie or, whatever, because it's just a machine that keeps going and going and going, and Star Wars is rapidly becoming that too. Just this feed you here's more, and like you're always eating, and then at some point it's like I'm tired of eating that. We grew up in a time where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm starving. Give me Space 99, give me Big Trouble in Little China, give me Tron. Right?
It's funny because we were like, why is it every 3 years that we have to wait for a Star Wars movie? But now it's like, why can't we just wait 3 years for a Star Wars movie?
Right? Like, it's every 15 minutes we get something new.
Yeah. So it's like back then we wanted more, but now that we get more, we're like, we don't want more, we want less. And you mentioned the animated series. One of my favorite companies was Filmation. I think they did some amazing stuff. Have you seen that new guy who's doing those?
He did Voyager.
Yeah, he just did Voyager, but he did Next Generation before that. Yeah, that's insane to me. Yeah, and I absolutely love the Filmation style of cartoons, and they use the same sound effects. They use the same like music kind of stuff for each one of their shows that they did. But we're gonna have Tom Cito on in a couple weeks, I think, who worked on Filmation, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So we'll have him on, but I don't think he worked on like the Star Trek and stuff. I think he said he came in at the tail end of Filmation. But what a great and you just mentioned all this bombardment. When we were a kid, we got up at 6 o'clock in the morning so we could watch Saturday morning cartoons until noon. Yep. Now you turn on the TV and you go, oh, let's go to, retro TV. Let's go to this. We can just watch it now. But back then it was special because you had to get up to see it. And then you had to figure out, do I want to watch CBS, ABC, or NBC? Right. Because they all had shows on at the same time. And you're like,
Starcade or Smurfs? Which do I want?
Exactly.
Right. Land of the Lost or Valley of the Dinosaurs? Which one am I going to watch? Absolutely. There was this idea of scarcity. I remember like living for the TV guide to come and circling things like I have to be here at this time so I can see this episode of Star Trek I've never seen before. And
this is my agenda.
Yeah, this is the movie that I've heard people talk about that I've never seen. It's on at 2 a.m. And it was before VCRs. Mom and Dad, wake me up because I gotta go in there and watch.
But the TV guide was the thing you needed.
Yeah, it was.
And they do the fall preview. It's like coming shows or whatever, Mr. Merlin or, Voyager, Tales of the Gold Monkey, Magnum PI. What is this? Simon and Simon or whatever. And you'd look at it, and then they'd have those little shows where they'd be like, coming this fall. It'd be like a 2-hour thing, and they'd show clips from different shows that were coming out or what the new Saturday morning lineup was going to be. And you'd watch it and you go, I want to see that. I want to see that or whatever. And they don't really do that anymore,
No, that kind of thing seems like very much in the past. And see, so I'm kind of like regretting my Planet of the Apes answer, which I loved. The kind of I'm thinking maybe I should have said TV Guide.
But yeah, it was such a different time. And people who didn't live it don't get it.
Right.
And you try to explain, like, my girlfriend has an 18 and a 15-year-old, and 5 years ago when I was talking to them, like, when I was a kid, and they're like, you're old, it's different now, and they like fight with me and stuff, and I'm like, no, but listen, we had to get up on Saturdays to watch TV, and you'd eat your cereal and watch TV, and it was Saturday morning cartoon. Okay. Like, never mind, I'm done.
I tell my classes the TV used to go off at midnight.
Yes.
Yep. Star Spangled Banner, and then.
Yep.
And most people don't believe me when I say this, but MTV had music videos.
Right.
It did. Yes. People think that's not true. Like, they try to fact check that, but they used to play videos.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Indeed.
It's like, thanks for the 2 years of music, MTV. Oh my God. But then when Nickelodeon first came on, they had the Tomorrow People.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this thing called The Third Eye, which had like The Haunting of Cassie Palmer, Children of the Stones, Under the Mountain, and one other thing. It was kind of like you didn't know which one you were going to get. Sort of like Cliffhangers, if anybody remembers Cliffhangers.
Cliffhangers, yes, World of Dracula. And
I don't.
Phantom Empire and some other like mystery thing. Yeah.
Michael Moore was Dracula. Mark Leonard was in that too. He was in the Underground Empire. Yeah.
So like these are these other shows.
Williams. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
So a lot of people forget like this stuff, I don't know, like we said, Otherworld and Wizard of Wars, but there was just so many cool things, and it's like you either lasted or you didn't. Like you only got like a week, and it's like now you're done.
Right.
And it's like, come on, I was watching that. Like,
right.
Jonathan Banks.
Yeah. The Phoenix, Starman, Automan.
Automan, yes.
Automan, yeah.
Maybe I don't.
Like I say, Mr. Merlin lasted like I think 14 episodes or whatever, and I just recently watched it all because it's supposed to have Clark Brandon on, and haven't been able to get a hold of him again. So I'm like, he was like, yeah, I'll do it. Sounds fun, and then I haven't been able to get a hold of him since. But so I watched all the Mr. Merlins to refresh my memory. But yeah, just so many shows. Powers of Matthew Starr, Whiz Kids.
Yep.
Oh gosh, yeah, I know. I'm like trying to think. All these just weird shows, but Little House on the Prairie lasted, 47 seasons, and Whiz Kids lasted like a month or whatever. It's weird, Yeah. And it's funny nowadays. Little House on the Prairie wouldn't last, and Whiz Kids would.
Yeah.
So it's just that whole like we weren't ready for Whiz Kids. We wanted the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie. Now people are like, we don't want Waltons in the Little House on the Prairie. We want Whiz Kids and the Powers of Matthew Starr. So it's like so weird, People are like, why wasn't there more seasons of this? Because they got canceled,
right?
Nobody
watched them.
Right. Well, a lot of times they would put, like Mr. Merlin up against Waltons or Little House on the Prairie. You can't go up against them. You couldn't go up against MASH. So, it's where you were that determined if you were going to live or die.
Right. So, right. V going up against Dallas. It's like, V the series.
The miniseries caught me. And then when V the Final Battle came, I'm like, yeah. And then the series was just like, yeah, we're done. But just so many good things. You mentioned Buck Rogers. I mean, I loved that show, and that seemed like it was doing well, but I guess by today's standards, it was $1 million an episode or whatever, but $1 million an episode is nothing. The Mandalorian probably does twice that amount for an episode or whatever,
It probably gets lower ratings because, again, that balkanization of television. You figure if 35% of the TV-going audience of America was watching Buck Rogers, how many millions of people was that?
Yeah. It just like you say, everything is different. It's like where you saying this show was no good then is perfect now. So
it just scales are all different now. Yeah, for sure.
But again, if there was such thing as time travel, I'd go back to the 70s. I don't know what exact year, but I'd go back there and spend a week and be like, yes, oh, my time is up.
I'm with you. The 70s. That would be the time I don't want to go back to 1979 and Alien and Star Trek: The Motion Picture and Buck Rogers and Moonraker and Meteor and
wow,
and Star Crash and all that stuff.
And it's funny though, because you pick that and then you go, but 82 had, and then you go, but 83 gave us, but remember in 84, so it's really hard. But yeah, there's got to be that one year that just, and if you went ahead, you would still get that stuff from 79 because it would be out already.
Be there. Yeah, you're right. Maybe you should go to
catch. So you go ahead and you can still enjoy that stuff. Yeah,
very good.
So you go 85. I get this and all that. All right. Well, anything you got going on that you want to tell our audience about that's coming up? Or
well, I am really excited. So in the late 2007, 2009, I created a web series called The House Between, and we got nominated for some best web series 2 years running, 21 episodes, and we're on the verge of launching an audio drama follow-up called Enter the House Between, with the original cast and continuing adventures of the characters from the show. So we've been recording episodes and we'll be launching that, I hope, by the end of the year. So I've been really excited about getting to take off into my own universe, out of a universe where I took all these influences. All my Space 1999 and Star Trek and V and all that stuff is percolated in my brain, and now I'm in my own little universe, so that it's really a lot of fun. And right now I'm really excited about that. And I've got horror films of the 2000s, 2000 to 2009 coming out, I think, in November.
Nice. Now I've been looking at you this whole time going, on Halloween, does he dress up as Donald Pleasance?
I do have a trench coat.
What?
No, it's not the usual.
Because I'm like, you could go, I shot him 6 times.
I love Dr. Loomis. I take that as a great compliment. I mean,
I couldn't remember. I forgot his name, but I know the actor. I couldn't remember his character's name. But you answered the door. Answer the door in a trench coat. Maybe have somebody behind you as Michael Myers.
From your ears to some, producers cast it, I would be a great Loomis in a new Halloween movie.
There you go. Loomis right here. John Kenneth Muir, people.
That's it.
He wrote a book on John Carpenter.
That's right.
Come on. It's like 7 degrees of fried bacon kind of thing.
Who better to take on the shape? Come on.
Yeah. But no, I was looking at, I'm like, wow, you'd make a perfect Loomis. But,
well, thank you. I take that as a compliment. I was afraid what you were going to say. So, I'll take Loomis. I'll do that.
But yeah, when you get closer to, these other things happening, give us a shout. We'll have you back on, because this was a lot of fun. Maybe next time you can come live from your room if it's all done. And
that would be pretty cool.
Let's do a toy episode. We'll just pivot the camera over when all these garbage bags are out of the way, and I will bring out the Jaws game and the Planet.
There you go.
All that stuff. So
and all your books are available on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. All right.
And there's 30 of them.
Yes. 30 at the moment. Yeah.
They are. They're all there.
Nice.
Well, thank you all so much. I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun.
John, thanks for joining us.
That's our middle name. It's fun.
What's that?
That's our middle name. Is fun. We try we just try to talk about everything and anything and just have fun. That's what it's about. It's no set topic. It's just whatever comes out, and it seems like we accomplished that.
We succeeded that this week, my friend.
Yes, we did.
I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
So keep in touch, and like I say, when you want to come on to promote something, give me a shout, and we'll figure it out. And we'll get you back on and stuff.
Well, I appreciate that. I would love to do the sequel.
Now, is there any place that the best place for people to find info on you, to follow you on Instagram, Facebook, your website?
you can follow me on Twitter at JK Muir. I'm also on Facebook, John Kenneth Muir. I use the Kenneth because there's other John Muirs who are writers. There's the great naturalist. There's a guy who fixes Volkswagens who's more popular than I am. And his name is John Muir. So to differentiate myself, that's why the Kenneth is in there, John Kenneth Muir. Sometimes I go by JKM as I am here. So yeah, JK Muir on Twitter. And you can find my blog. It's Reflections on Film and Television. And I haven't updated my website in probably 16 years. So
I noticed that. I wasn't going to say anything, but I noticed that. And I was like, he hasn't done anything since 2005? What?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
I did notice that, though.
It's like I'm still on Yahoo Page Builder. It's like really old stuff, but so I guess I need to update that too. But soon there'll be a new website dropping for the House Between series and stuff like that. So I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So thank you. But my books are on Amazon. Find me there, John Kenneth Muir.
Chris, where do you want people following you besides on the street like that stalker you had there for a while?
And I don't mind that so much. At least I'm getting the attention. But right here with you.
That's it.
That's it. I'm on Instagram too, but
gosh,
nothing special.
I had
you go here.
Yeah.
There you go. All my links are at the bottom. Links to my Internet Movie Database page, my Amazon book, and blah, 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 blah. But thank everybody for tuning in today. Again, thank you, John Kenneth Muir, for being here. And we'll definitely have to chat with you again. It was a load of fun for sure.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much.
See you later.
All right.
Thanks again, John.
Bye-bye.